Oh, I finished my smoothie. I didn't realize I finished my smoothie. That's the kind of morning it's been. And I even cleaned out the cup. I'm sorry that you're sore, Chelsea. Good morning, Marky Mad. Good morning, Becky. Happy Friday, everyone. When Felice sent me the line today, that was the first time I realized that it was Friday. So that was a welcome sight.
You didn't know it was Friday?
I don't know how I don't know what happened this week. I can't believe it's Friday. This week just flew by.
God, lucky you. I don't.
Well, it's usually a week flies by when it's like a hectic week, which it's absolutely been. I mean, it's
That's
string
true.
cheese, by the way, for breakfast.
I love string cheese.
This is not my, I don't know what brand this is. It's not my favorite. The thing I don't like with string cheese is if it's too soft. Like I need it to like stay together a little bit more. If it's too soft to the string, do you know what I'm talking about? Like when you string it and it
You
comes
mean you
off
need
like
it to
in
be able to
chunks
rip
instead.
apart? Yeah, it's got to come
Yeah,
apart in strings. Yeah, I know what you mean by that.
yeah. This one's too soft. Sorry, I don't want to chew in the mic. Done with my string cheese
It
now.
is Friday. Thank you. We have made it.
Bonjour.
What a crazy week.
It's been a week. It's getting. That's the other thing. Like usually Friday is a pretty slow news day. Like usually we're like, what are we going to talk about? No, everything happened last night. Just
Yeah, so many crazy
like,
things. Every day is crazier than the last. That's like what we were saying. Like anytime the last 2 months of my life, like anytime I think like that's it, it can't get worse.
it just gets worse.
Every time I ever think that, so I need to stop thinking that because I
You
feel
can't think that. You need to
just
expect the
jinxing
worst at all
myself.
times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I should. That
Speaking of
much has become clear.
speaking of expecting the worst, do you think you had a worse day than Angoron yesterday?
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, did he have a great day, or does he secretly love what happened? Like he gave Trump the rope to hang himself, and Trump hung himself. You mean in the courtroom, or?
Yeah, there's no way. Yeah, there's no way he liked that. It's so bizarre reading. First of all, I wish it was recorded, but just reading what happened in the courtroom yesterday
Oh
is
yeah.
absolutely insane. Like they're like the part that I thought was funny was, um,
Which
and it goes to
article are you looking at? The Washington Post or the New York
this
Times?
may have been one I was reading on my own.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but it's probably in there. But basically, when Ngoron tells him, he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna let you speak."
Yeah.
But you have to promise me you're only going to talk. And Trump just started talking. Trump didn't even let
He
him
like
finish.
grabbed the mic. It was like,
He
excuse
just
me.
grabbed the mic and immediately went, "This is a political witch hunt. This entire thing is a sham." It's like, oh, God damn. You know,
Like
and Gordon's like, God,
literally.
that was why I was going to say that. I was going to say, you can't say that. Donald Trump just, honest to God, believes that this world revolves around him. And it's unfortunate that he's co opted so many fucking idiots to go with him on that, where they're like, "Oh yeah, the world does revolve around Donald Trump. If we don't have Donald Trump in office, then everything will go bad."
Yeah,
It's my
like the New York
Trump
Times had
supporter.
like a key, like a pretty for the New York Times a short article, just like key takeaways from like what happened. They had some key takeaways, and so they were basically saying like the first one is if offered an opportunity, Trump will do what he wants. And it's like so true because so just to give you guys
Or
an
if
idea,
not
if
off,
you
or not if not offered, he also will do what he
yeah, well,
wants.
that too. That absolutely. But yeah, so like just to give you guys the background on this, so the closing arguments were yesterday in the New York civil fraud trial that Letitia James, the New York Attorney's General, is prosecuting. So yeah, that was the closing arguments. And in an email exchange, Christopher Kais, Trump's lawyer, floated the idea to the judge that Trump wanted to speak for some of the closing arguments. So it says when a lawyer for Mr. Trump raised the possibility that the former president might speak on his own behalf, and Gorin was open to the idea. And here's the quote: "In a non-jury trial, I'm inclined to let everyone have his or her say," which is fair, right? Like to have his or her say, he wrote in an email. He cautioned that Mr. Trump would have to abide by the rules that apply to lawyers. He would have to stick to the facts of the case and the law and refrain from attacking Letitia James, the attorney general, the judge himself, or the judge's staff members. So the Christopher Kise objected in the email chain to that, but the judge insisted. And when Christopher Kise missed a deadline, like he didn't follow up, like the judge set a deadline to say, decide if Trump's going to speak, let me know. He missed that deadline. So that's why we were reporting yesterday that Trump probably wasn't going to speak
Yeah.
during the trial because his lawyer, Trump said that he wouldn't follow the rules. His lawyer did not follow up on the email chain. So everyone assumed like that's a dead issue. Trump can't do it. So then on Thursday, Kise asked the judge again in the courtroom whether the president could deliver his own closing argument. So the judge seemed inclined to allow it, but addressed the former president directly in the courtroom, asking him to restrain himself and abide by those conditions. And then it says, that was all the permission Mr. Trump needed. He took the microphone, said that he did not see how he could stick to the facts and the law when the case went beyond them, and then monologued for 5 minutes. He attacked the judge, saying, you have your own agenda. He went after Miss James, accusing her of perpetrating a, quote, fraud on me. Perhaps, and then the most interesting part, this is how fair this man is, this judge, okay? It says, perhaps the most surprising feature of Mr. Trump's closing argument was that he stopped willingly after 5 minutes because it was time for lunch. He had to hit up McDonald's.
Gotta
So
get
he's
that
like,
McFish.
time to eat. Like, let's call it. Let's take a break. And willingly stopped. And after the lunch break, he gave him another chance to finish. He got back up and started trashing everyone again.
He is like, it is kind of like I don't know what Engoron can do other than just like appease him.
Yeah, it's like a toddler
that's
that
who,
you're just like, okay.
yeah, and that's who Donald Trump is. But what's more embarrassing is just the amount of people who still have respect for this man. Like this man has no respect for anyone or anything. He thinks everything is a campaign stop. He thinks everything is just like the whole world is stacked against him. He was handed a silver platter. He didn't really have to do any serious work his entire life to be ludicrously rich, and he still like has convinced millions of people that he's a victim. Like millions and millions of people think he's a victim. It's absolute insanity. I was watching Adam Craze live before I came in here. He's talking to, I forget the guy's name, but like it's just sad to me that you see all these people, all these hardworking Americans. All these people who do care about their country and do want what's best for their country just have no clue. They just have no clue that they've been completely duped, completely co-opted, and they're being sold this bill of goods that doesn't exist. They're being sold this narrative of we're the victims, and it's turned all of them into just like the whiniest little bitches. All of them. It's what MAGA is now. It's devastating.
Well, so they're asking for 370 million. This article actually said some other quick things I think you guys will find interesting, and I want to.
Did we figure out why that bumped? I was trying to figure that out this morning. Why it went from 250?
Well, she
to
just said,
370?
in her statement or whatever, she said that's the amount that they can estimate that he gained through the fraud. Like when they're calculating, like what did he get? Like that was her explanation. It says 370 million, which she says is the amount the Trump business gained through the fraud, and that the former president and other defendants, and then the other thing is that they be barred from New York's real estate industry. So the one thing I want to note is definitely the judge, from what I read in the transcripts and the notes, like gave some hope to the Trump sons. Like he said yesterday that like he didn't feel that the fraud, like that their contributions to this constituted fraud. Like it sounds like he's more concentrating on Trump directly. He didn't say they were innocent or that they're getting off, but he expressed some doubt. Let me see if I can find the exact words. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So he says she also named Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. as defendants, but on Thursday, as the Attorney General's office argued that they played a role in creating some of Mr. Trump's financial statements, that's what they're saying, that they helped create some of the financial statements. The judge expressed doubt that Ms. James had proven her case against them. In particular, he seemed skeptical that the Attorney General had sufficiently tied Donald Trump Jr. to the wrongdoing. So not so much. Eric just
Well,
looked so guilty. I mean,
well, Eric
that
was
face.
he was just pouring concrete.
Eric
Everybody
was
knows
building the houses.
all Eric was doing.
Eric
was
built
just
the
a
New
day
York
laborer.
skyline. That's what we
Correct.
learned. With his
Correct.
bare hands.
The claims of this case are wild. The triplex that is come into question, that Donald Trump overvalued by $100 million, and their evidence, the evidence that they cited for why they could charge 100 million more than what it's actually worth, is because somebody sent them an email and said that, like a real estate agent said, this is what it's worth. Despite, if you look at the time, nothing was selling for anywhere near that number. And the one property that they chose, that they could compare, and it was still much lower, sold for 40% of asking price. So they took the asking price, bumped Donald Trump's numbers up, and then they bumped it up again because they said since Donald Trump was a celebrity, it was worth even more. By the way, the same triplex, by the way, that they overvalued the square footage, the same way they did in his penthouse when he would listed it at 33,000 square feet and it was 10,000 square feet. Donald Trump admitted this actually yesterday, which is
Well,
weird.
you heard Alina Hava,
Yeah.
their new line. You heard the new line, which is real estate is an art, not a science, is what we had
Yeah,
shoved down
yeah,
our
that's what
throats
it is.
yesterday at the press conference was just like, are we've entered an alternate reality. Yeah, counting square
Also,
footage
it's
is in fact math, which is in fact a science.
yeah,
But
and
that was a
real
nice
estate,
try, Alina. We almost believed you.
real estate is neither math nor science. It's basic. It's just property, and you use math and science to determine its value. But real estate itself is not art, nor is it science. And Donald Trump's real estate for sure isn't art. It's just they build something massive and gaudy and make everything inside of it gold. But it's just gold, paint gold, because we're not going to use real gold.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yesterday was so unbelievable. That press conference is unbelievable. I have to say, like, it's so clear too, these like lines, and Mr. Trump built the New York skyline. And I can't believe the stuff that Alina Hava has to yell while he stands there, like, just looking like, oh, this is such a nice thing she's saying about me. I didn't force her to memorize this.
You've been to New York probably multiple times.
I used to live there.
Yeah. Okay, you lived there. Did Donald Trump create that skyline? Is Donald Trump's, are his buildings really prominent in that skyline?
No, but I also, yeah, no.
Yeah, they're not. They're not. He just has apartment buildings. Nobody thinks apartment buildings are like what makes up the New York City skyline.
And I didn't
Nobody
live
gets
there
a
that
globe.
long. The only thing I know for sure about Trump is like, yeah, there's a long history with Trump and the people in that city. Like, that's why he can't go there without being booed. They know that he doesn't pay contractors and all that. There's just a lot of disgruntled people in that city. And the only building, like Trump Tower has his name on it. Like, that's the only building that anyone in my, like, that I directly know, like, oh, he owns that building. But again, I only lived there for work, like for a couple years. So I didn't.
When you worked for Trump.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, exactly. That was
It was a beautiful time of your life. Do you want to get to? Do we want to go over the stuff that happened in the Middle East yesterday?
Yeah, I just think we should probably just mention, how many countries was it? Like a coalition, a US led coalition essentially did some airstrikes, what we do best, against the Houthis in Yemen. These are like a rebel group that is funded by Iran. they have been attacking commercial ships in the Red Sea. Like, and they are delaying world supply chain. That's what's going on because
And
of
they are
what's
saying
happening
that
in
they're
Gaza. Yeah, because
yeah,
of
they're
what's,
standing in solidarity with the Palestinians, is what they're saying, and so
so
they
yeah.
yeah, they're not going to stop the attacks until the attacks from Israel on the Palestinians end.
Yeah, so I believe it's like 5 countries. The only Middle Eastern country I think that was involved, I read, was Bahrain.
Yeah, and
Uh,
they were real hesitant to say that they
yeah,
were
because they have
involved.
to be
They
over
should
there. You
be.
know, they're like, ugh. Well, here's the statement. Like I put the statement in the outline so we could just read this. This is the statement from Joe Biden. So today, at my direction, U.S. military forces, together with the United Kingdom and with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada, and the Netherlands, successfully conducted strikes against a number of targets in Yemen used by Houthi rebels to endanger freedom of navigation in one of the world's most vital waterways. These strikes are in direct response to unprecedented Houthi attacks against international maritime vessels in the Red Sea, including the use of anti-ship ballistic missiles for the first time in history. These attacks have endangered U.S. personnel, civilian mariners, and our partners, jeopardized trade, and threatened freedom of navigation. More than 50 nations have been affected in 27 attacks on international commercial shipping. Crews from more than 20 countries have been threatened or taken hostage in acts of piracy. More than 2,000 ships have been forced to divert thousands of miles to avoid the Red Sea, which can cause weeks of delay in product shipping times. And on January 9th, Houthis launched their largest attack to date, directly targeting American ships.
Yeah, first of all, it appears that the Abraham Accords did not bring peace in the Middle East.
So,
It would appear.
oh no, don't
It
tell
would appear. And
Trump.
I believe, isn't Bahrain one of the countries that was part of the Abraham Accords? If I remember correctly, that Bahrain is
Let
one
me
of
just double
the.
check. But yet it's an Arab country, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were. And again, like this is going to show that what those Abraham Accords did is they took countries that were already basically working together and they coalesced together, and now they're just on our side in these exchanges. That's basically like it's not for
Yes,
peace.
they were. You're right.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. But this is the part where
Guys, tap the screen. Let's get to 25K and then let's invite some Republicans. It's Friday. We'd love to chat with some people. Sorry, go ahead.
this is just that neocon shit though. Like this is
Oh,
this
so
is
neocon. The
it's the
neocons, the neolibs are just loving this today.
this
The
is America.
warlords.
Like we could use all of our might. We could use all of our power. We could use all of our influence to demand a ceasefire in Gaza and try and promote actual peace there. But instead, because other countries have decided to engage and stand in solidarity with the Palestinians, and look, obviously, what they're doing is wrong too. Firing on ships, closing
Yeah,
trade
taking
routes,
hostages. Yeah.
taking hostages. I'm not trying to justify any of that, but
Yeah.
it's just this continuation of the war machine. And at all times, what the United States does is they use force. And then, look, we're going to win this. Like, we'll win this engagement eventually. Like, I know that the Houthi leader said that they're not afraid of America, but like you should.
Oh yeah, then they answered, but they were like, "Well, they're going to suffer for this or something." Yeah, they definitely
they're
did
like, the
not
Americans
take
are-
it well. Lesson not
And
learned.
look, maybe some Americans will. There will likely be counterattacks because of this, and some of those attacks could be sneak type attacks. That those could happen on American soil even. But it's just the proliferation of war. It's what we do. We don't
It's
we
to
can't
protect capitalism, right? What is he saying? He's saying
exactly.
the supply chain is being disrupted. The global capitalistic supply chain has been disrupted, and that can't be allowed, right? Because what it will happen, the all of the supply chain is affected, prices raise, things cost more. That can affect elections, like all sorts of things. This is saying our resources, our capitalistic resources are being held up in the Red Sea. And it also speaks to how did the rebels know like to do this? Why is that so effective? Because the global supply chain is what the American military is protecting more often than not.
23,000 dead in Gaza. That can be allowed. That we have to just stand with our allies. Decimating an entire city, that can be allowed. But God forbid we affect the global supply chain, and you have to reroute ships. Look, all of it's bad. I don't like that. Is it Houthi or you say Houthi? Is it? Do
I
you
say
pronounce
Houthi.
it?
I
I don't know either.
mm,
I was a
look,
Republican
why
for a
don't we
long
Google
time.
it?
I remember
Let's Google
I
it.
remember
Let's
Republican
learn.
debates saying Houthi, so it's probably wrong. But what was I saying? Oh,
I'm sure it's Arabic.
now I lost my thought. Now I lost my thought. I'm sorry. It's both. There we go. Facts. I love that. Good morning, facts.
Is it both?
Yeah, sure. I don't know how it's both, but
Yeah,
it's
just
both.
writing the word doesn't help us, guys. Like we'd have to hear you. We'd have
Yeah,
to
well, I
hear
know
you
there's an
say-
H there. I
We'd
see
have to
it.
hear you say it. Yeah.
It's just
Hold on,
that I
I'm gonna
don't
play
know
this.
what to do with the H once I come across it. I'm not sure how to do it. Anyways, it's just sad. It's
He's saying Houthi. Houthi. Yeah, it's Houthi. I just listened to a pronunciation on the internet.
and
It's
then
Houthi.
and now this is going to be all day. It's going to be Democrats talking about how Joe Biden's going to war. You already saw Marjorie Taylor Greene not understanding a
She
goddamn
needs to
thing
worry about
ever.
herself.
Joe Biden is taking us into war. Only Congress can approve war. Yeah, he's not going to war. Like,
That's not a war.
yeah, the president
Someone's-
is allowed to authorize strikes.
Someone's attacking ships in international waters. This is not going to war. But don't explain that to Margarine.
No, well, don't explain anything to Margarine. But it'll be a way to further divide, and we're gonna sit here and we're gonna argue about it. Meanwhile, people are dying. Meanwhile, people continue to die in Gaza, and we just got to protect that money. And for any Donald Trump supporter, like he would have done this, but worse. It's likely that he would have acted
He was
with more
attacking
force.
Yemen during his prison. This was
Correct.
happening then. This is my point where, well, as Americans, we don't need to be worried about official wars. That's how America, it's not about whether we're in official wars. These are proxy wars or conflicts, whatever you want to call that we're involved in the name of protecting capitalistic resources and the supply chain that moves those resources around the world in a timely manner. So, and we do that outside, more often than not, outside of the bounds of war. That's why it's just not correct to come up ever and say, oh, well, Trump was involved in peace. No, he wasn't. He was involved in things just like this, which is not war, but it's still the United States all around the world protecting our interests with military force.
Right, and and to be clear, I have the same criticism of Joe Biden that I
Same.
have of Donald Trump. It's the same criticism.
Same.
It's like what the only thing Tulsi Gabbard has ever been right about in her entire life is these
Another
fucking
broken
endless,
clock that's right.
yeah,
twice a
regime
day.
change wars in the Middle East. Yeah, like that. Every time we perpetuate violence in the Middle East, we create more dissidents. We create more enemies.
Radicalization.
Yes, when you have collateral damage, the family members or the friends of those who lose their lives, it's much easier to radicalize them. It's much easier to show them that America is the bad guy and that they have to be stopped. Like every time we do this, it's just creating future conflict down the road. And the sad part is that everybody knows this, and yet we still keep doing the same thing. Everybody knows this is true, but nobody can ever just stand by and be like, you know what? It's not our job to police everything. It's not our job to act with violence. We've got to come to an agreement here. We have to negotiate, but we refuse to do that. We've seen it in Israel, and now we're seeing it here. When it comes to the Middle East, I don't believe that the neocons and the neo-libs really view people in the Middle East as human beings.
Oh, of course not. But I think also it's important to just notice that it is very hypocritical. Like what the American government, this is not about partisanship, right? And that's a fact. It's about capitalism and protecting our interests. So we are basically, anytime things get uncomfortable domestically, right? That has something to do usually with the global supply chain when prices are raising. But Republicans somehow think, right, with their America first, close the borders, don't fund any don't be involved in any foreign policy, that prices at home can remain low. Like, do you know what I'm saying? That's the hypocrisy of the Republicans, is thinking they want their gas. All we hear is whining about gas prices. If you don't want war, if you don't want us policing the world and protecting the global supply chain, like making sure commercial ships can pass safely through like one of the most important global shipping routes, then get ready for prices to explode domestically.
Right. And it's so propped up on this lie that no matter what we do, the people in the Middle East will hate us. The people in the Middle East absolutely have a right to hate America. Absolutely. And us using force is not a way that is going to fix this problem. It's just going to perpetuate it forever and ever and ever. And at some point, like, somebody's got to be the person who decides, like, they're going to step up and they're going to be the voice for peace. And the voice for peace can't be Finland, and the voice for peace can't be Sudan. Like, it has to be America. There's only one country that can actually stand up, that has the economic and military force to say, like, we're going to be the people that bring peace. We're going to be the people that stop getting involved. But we never, ever would, because we have too many interests to protect for, like you said, for the capitalists all over the world. We need that money to funnel through America. We can't allow Yemen to become a superpower. We can't allow Iran to become a superpower. We have to control the interests of the money. That's how our country stays a superpower. And for some reason, that's really, really important to a lot of Americans. It's very important that we be the dominant ones. And I don't understand that at all. If you look at like the happiness indexes, if you look at the countries where people are the healthiest, the happiest, that have the best families, it's not us. It's the countries largely who stay out of this shit. It's the countries who largely just focus on living their lives, and they don't worry about the cultures or customs or religions or political ideologies of other countries. They stay the fuck out of it.
Well, and I think, like, do you remember when I was talking about, everyone always thinks anything happening in the Middle East has something to do with oil resources. But I was saying, like, nearest I could tell when I was doing research about what's going on in Gaza, there's the plans that involve the U.S. and the United Kingdom for the new canal that's going to spit out right where Gaza is. Because of this, think like the Red Sea, these commercial shipping lanes, global supply chain is being messed up. Even when they're not under attack by piracy, only like ships can't pass or move next to each other. So they want to create a deeper, larger canal where two ships can be side by side or can pass each other. And that canal, the plans for that canal spits out right in Gaza. It's I mean, it's
Weird.
interesting. It's so,
Weird.
but
They'll probably need to, yeah, and they'll probably need to like level some buildings and stuff for
the
that
strangest
construction
thing.
project.
How that
Lucky,
works.
lucky how some of that's being done already. I like, I don't know how we can look at what's happening there any longer and just say that anything is just. 23,000 people have died in Gaza. Like, Gaza is not a big place. 23,000 people are dead. I have no idea how at this point we can continue to say, oh, we're just allying with Israel. They're the good guy. We gotta wipe these people off the map. It's just the terrorists. No, it's 23,000 people. It's not just a terrorist group. These are innocent lives being lost over and over and over again. And somebody messaged me the other day and asked why we don't cover this a lot, and we don't. And it's purposely because of the emotions that it brings for people. And for me, I feel it feels so helpless. Like, no matter what we say, the military industrial complex keeps going. The neocons, the neolibs, they're going to keep doing what they do. Like, to me, there's two reasons we don't talk about it. One, oftentimes it seems fruitless, but two, the discussions that we're having, the discussions of the history of the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, those debates on whose land it is, on what the solution should be happening in a closed room or in open debate, but it shouldn't be happening while Gaza is being shelled. That nobody cares about the actual conversation. That's just a sideshow while the Israeli military forces continue to shell Gaza. So for the people that ask why we don't cover it, that's why. Like, these These discussions have no bearing. These are the discussions that we should be having during a ceasefire. Give us a ceasefire, and then these discussions matter. But until then, it feels just devastating day after day after day to make these to have these discussions, to have these debates, and then just watch as Gaza continues to be decimated.
Well, and also, I don't think this. Well, it might be true for everyone, not necessarily for everyone, but in my experience with specifically talking about not live creators, but creators who make content on TikTok, like larger creators like Hawk, like anytime we posted about it, we were deplatformed and shadow banned. Like we could, it was discouraged by the algorithm to be posting about it. Like, especially if you were in the what am I trying to call it? The creator program.
Creativity.
Yeah,
beta
like they
program.
would not push
Yeah.
content about that stuff. You couldn't get paid out over it, so you
Yeah.
were shadow banned. So that's
Adam
the other
Raid
reason.
again. Real quick, Adam Raid again. Back-to-back days. Thank you, Adam. Everybody
Hi,
that's
guys.
coming
Thank
from.
you.
I was late today because I was watching Adam's live. So
I like
it's good to have you guys
Adam's
back with
dry
us.
sarcasm. Like that's right up my alley.
But yeah, that's a good point. Like the people, the advertisers, the people at TikTok that are spending money.
Creator fund. Thank you. I
Creator
could not
fund, yeah.
remember that word.
I'm not in the creator fund. You're early. So for people that were creators before me, you guys are in the creator fund, but that doesn't exist for people that came around when I did and previous. Like we have the creativity beta program.
That's what I'm talking about. That one though.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
That's what
yeah.
I'm talking about. I don't know,
Advertisers
like
won't-
for content over 1 minute long. Yeah.
Yeah, advertisers won't.
And I'm actually not in it. I said I don't I didn't know how I wanted to generate revenue off to. I don't generate. Yeah. I'm not in it.
It's just strictly with threats. Felice doesn't generate revenue off of her videos, but in the DMs she regularly threatens people and gets ransom. So, and it's going really well. Her
So
business is going
yeah,
really
leverage.
well.
That's really what I do on here. I'm just like
All right, let's leave that topic. Well, unless there's something else you
but
want to say about
no,
it.
that's pretty much it. I think it's just important to say that. It is weird sometimes, like you're saying, that we don't ever talk about it, but I'm glad we talked about why. So there you have it.
All right, let's go. I added what? I don't know if you had this one. Will you go all the way to the bottom and look at 50? Did you see this one?
Oh, let me see.
I can play it. This is
Yeah.
Chip
Oh,
Roy
I am
and
Thomas Massey. I have another thing. After you play that, I'll play Thomas Massey being a misogynist. Thomas Massey is on my. Kentucky did not send their best to Washington. I think
Is
we
that-
can.
Is that with Boldwan?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that's actually how I found this next video. I was watching that video and then this one pulled up because Thomas Massey is trending, and if Thomas Massey's trending, that's never a good thing. But this is a clip. This is from an Iowa town hall. Ron DeSantis has Thomas Massey and Chip Roy out campaigning for him, specifically campaigning against Donald Trump. And I just wanted to play this clip from Chip Roy, who, like, poor guy, just can't seem to get his bearings. He'll make sense one day, and then the next day he's like, wait a minute, I've got to go back to being a psycho. But here's him just ripping Donald Trump for 2 minutes.
There we go. One thing to add to that. In 2018, when I was running for Congress, I had served as Senator Cruz's chief of staff a few years before that. That's when I first got to know the governor and Thomas as well. And when I was running in 2018, you might remember, and this is important, there were bills on the floor of the House to address the border issue and immigration. Unfortunately, then President Trump sided with Paul Ryan to choose an amnesty first non-security bill as the bill that he endorsed and got behind. Now look, I support a lot of the people who worked in President Trump's administration. Tom Homan, Mark Morgan, they're friends of mine. I work with them all the time. A lot of good things that were done with respect to Remain in Mexico and those issues. But it matters that you actually fight to work with Congress and lead to get permanent changes. Had we gotten permanent changes in 2018 that Ron DeSantis fought for when he was in the Freedom Caucus, but that we got stopped because President Trump sided with Paul Ryan, we wouldn't have as bad of an issue as we have right now, because the laws would be in place to stop the abuse of asylum and parole, because that's what's happening right now. They are using our laws against us to dump millions of people, and they're endangering us in the process. This is a problem you can solve with executive orders, declaring an emergency, do it immediately, but you need permanent reforms to stop the abuses that we're seeing right now under Joe Biden.
Yep, go ahead.
And here's Thomas.
Also,
The train.
I don't mean to offend the children in here, but I'm going to compare Congress to children here for a second. If you tell your kid their bedtime is 8 and you let them stay up till midnight, they will not take you seriously. President Trump signed an omnibus, and it didn't have the money for a full wall in there, and he said, I'll never do this again. And then he did it again, and he did it again. And you can go find a dozen times where he signed a CR or an omnibus and complained that it didn't have the wall in it. He could have vetoed it, okay? And the Democrats didn't have the votes in the Senate to override a veto. So he could have vetoed these things. And, you know, what Governor DeSantis has done, I think he's used the veto pen lightly, but he has used it. And you only have to use it a few times to be taken seriously. And if Trump had done that in the very beginning on the wall and said, this is my signature issue, do not offend me by sending me a bill that has no money for my wall in it, he would have got the money for the wall.
There we go. One thing
Oops,
to add to that.
oops.
In 2018, when
I
I was
pushed
running
the
for
wrong
Congress,
button.
I had served as Senator.
So they're backing
there's a
up
couple-
DeSantis in this?
Yeah, they're all
Wow.
about. I mean, they're campaigning for DeSantis right now. I had a couple thoughts.
Go
when I
to
watched
Truth
it.
Social and see if there's a if he's
Yeah.
bashing Thomas Massey yet.
That was one of the things I was thinking of. There is so much shit that Donald Trump is dealing with that I do actually think that these Republicans in Congress, especially ones that nobody gives a shit about, like Thomas Massey, like they can kind of fly under the radar and criticize Trump because there's so many things that he can't even keep track of all the people that are criticizing him now at this point. But I did want to point out a few things. Number one, both Chip Roy and Thomas Massey were in Congress in 2008 when we were talking about this bill, the exact bill that they're talking about, the omnibus package. Neither one of them was willing to be this critical until now. It's 2024. 6 years later, they finally found, to use Nancy Mace's words, their balls, and now they're out here campaigning on it because why? Why are they campaigning on this? Because they finally have a guy that they think when he's president will subvert the will of the people and use the power of the veto to take care of libertarians like Thomas Massey and Chip Roy. People who don't care what the American people actually want, but just want the far right. And I don't mean far right in either of these two gentlemen's cases. I think that I wouldn't call them like white nationalists. I don't want to go that far. But I mean like the politically the further right part of the Republican Party. They believe that the president's role, the power of the veto, is to protect them. But the veto is to protect the country. The veto is not to protect the political interest. So I just want to point out that while they're criticizing Donald Trump, their solution is we need a guy who will go in there and do what most of the country doesn't want him to do. And they're going to do it's for the good of the people, and we know what the good of the people is, and that's why we like Ron DeSantis. So I just want to point out that while they are being critical of Trump, they're advocating that the new guy be worse than Trump.
Oh yeah, it's so hypocritical. I was just looking. So Trump does have a rant about Ron, but he doesn't specifically name these two or backing them. But he
doesn't know who they are. There's no way he knows who Thomas Massey is.
Well,
He's never
he knows
heard of
who Chip
Thomas
Roy
Massey.
was because Chip Roy voted to certify the election in 2020.
That's right. So he knows Chip.
Betrayed him. So he points that out from time to time. Ron DeSanctimonious has dropped to a solid third place in the new Suffolk University poll as Bird Brain, that's Nikki Haley, who performed poorly in the last debate against him, that's not true, nevertheless overtakes Ron in Iowa. Trump, however, surges to a 34-point lead, knowing that his people will vote no matter how cold it gets. They will walk on glass for him in order to make America great again. Chris Christie is kaput, strangely deciding to drop out prior to New Hampshire, where he has put in so much time, effort, and money. I hear he will be endorsing Ada Hutchinson, who last week cracked 1% for the first time before falling back down to zero. Chris is desperately seeking a TV job, but sadly no one wants him. ABC fake news can get him back for half of what they were paying him. May he rest in peace. Okay. Oh, good Lord.
All right.
And
Thanks,
then
Donald.
let me read this one about, hold on, then he wrote one right now about Judge Engoron. Judge Engoron announced why didn't Judge Engoron announce his decision yesterday after we proved conclusively that I did nothing wrong, in all caps? No jury allowed because your lawyer messed it up. Great financial statements, no victims, no fraud, no crimes, happy banks and insurance companies, only success and profits, and a corrupt New York State Attorney General who sat comfortably and confidently in court yesterday with her shoes off, arms folded, a Starbucks coffee, and a big smile on her face, just like she knows exactly what the decision will be. Maybe that's because he's already been found partially liable.
Yeah, that's because you forgot to get a jury, and so he already ruled that he basically ruled that you were guilty. At this point, it's damages. Yeah, I wonder why.
The closing argument of the state was pathetic. No witnesses and no evidence against me. Legal scholars are killing the AG and judge for this witch hunt.
Felice, real quick. Now, I'm not an expert in the law, and I know you've watched a lot of court cases. Have you ever seen closing arguments that included a witness?
No.
Do they call witnesses during closing arguments? Do they present new evidence during closing arguments, or is our closing? And just because I don't know, maybe you can tell me. I always thought closing arguments were kind of just a recap of your case, but maybe I'm wrong. Can you correct me on that?
Yeah.
Am I
no
right?
witnesses.
Oh
Yeah,
shit,
you're
I was right. That sucks.
The judge is being badly influenced, and the gag order must come off. Remember, this judge ruled against me before the trial even started, and he knew nothing about the case, except for all of the discovery that he looked through. The public is angry over this hoax. This trial is rigged. Okay. Well, he's doing well this morning.
Yeah, he's doing well this morning.
Working
You thought
himself
you had a
into a
bad night. I thought
frenzy.
I had a bad night.
I know.
Dude, I got to tell you, can I complain for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
Because I do feel like complaining. Our friend Gunther Eagleman out there on
God.
Twitter,
I
he
unfollowed
tweeted
him.
out this morning after I woke up. Well, let me tell the whole story. So I don't know what I did to my knee last night, but it just started. I was walking up some steps and there was a sharp pain. And then all through the night, every time I moved at all, sharp pain would go through my leg and I would wake up. So I actually wound up in the middle of the night. When I'm tired, I'm actually pretty smart. I went and I got 2 towels and I wrapped them tightly around my leg and then pushed the mattress next to the wall so my leg couldn't move anymore. Like I immobilized my own leg, and that's how I was able to get sleep. But anyways, Gunther Eagleman, if you're not following him on
Someone
Twitter,
said you have gout.
fuck you. Fuck all of you.
The disease of like gluttonous kings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Gunther Eagleman today, if you're not following him on Twitter, don't, because he's disgusting. But he let me know this morning. He said something like, I'm feeling a little under the weather today, so I'm gonna tweet less. Like he just thought he needed to announce that today. He's like, I'll give the libs and the rhinos a break. I don't remember why I started this story. Why did I start this story?
You were
really,
just going to tell me something about
you
Gunther
really fucked me
Eagleman.
up with
Was
the
that
gout
it?
thing. That hurt my
Yes.
it hurt my feelings. I don't remember what I was saying. Never mind. We'll keep going. I just wanted everybody to feel sympathy for me, I guess. Guys, my knee hurts, so feel bad for me.
Well, I wanted to talk about quickly just the misogyny that was going on in some interviews yesterday. Troy Nels is like, and if you guys don't know, so I posted a TikTok about this morning. Troy Nels did an interview with none other than Maria Bartiromo, who Maria Bartiromo, right, is so inappropriate and lets people
Pulitzer-winning Maria.
Yeah, I can
Just
count
kidding.
on. Well, no, she used to be an award-winning journalist. Like, let's not remember when she used to be a reputable Wall Street financial. Many people invested based on her suggestion. She really was. But now, she's kind of a conspiracy theorist, lets people say whatever they want. I have never seen an interview with her where she looks shocked, where she's like, oh, like where her face like visibly all of a sudden was like, what? Like Troy Nell's,
What number is this?
it is, I'm not, somewhere in the middle. Troy Nell's insulted first Karine Jean-Pierre and said, I think the word, he said she's a nutcase, and then goes in on Kamala in the most disgusting way and says she's worthless. So I just wanted to play this because
Let's play those.
yeah, I'm just tired of here. I'm gonna play.
That is a that is a process that they took, so they have to answer to that. And as it relates to migrants and what's happening at the border, look, the president has taken this issue very seriously.
Congressman, your thoughts?
I can't listen to that nut job. I can't believe anything she says. Listen, because Joe Biden.
Okay, so that's what he said. I can't listen to that nut job. I can't believe anything she says. And then
That's a terrific answer.
Yeah.
That's a terrific answer to what she said.
Would he say
what
that
are your
about him?
thoughts on that? I hate her. Thank you.
yeah, this is a man in the United States Congress. So here and then she asked him about Kamala, and here's what he has to say.
Kamala Harris to do.
Well, she's not going to do anything. I think they just put her out there to make it look like she's actually worth something. She isn't worth anything. They've kind of put her in the basement, if you haven't noticed recently,
Yeah.
because I think she embarrasses herself.
Kamala Harris to do.
Can you? He said that the vice president of the United States is worth nothing. These are two African American women. And I want to say, like, when in my TikTok this morning, I called it misogyny. And then if you listen to the end, I was explaining when misogyny is directed at African American women, like this becomes what we call intersectionalism, right? It's not just misogyny. It's called misogynoir, right? It's racism and misogyny layered on top of each other. It's absolutely vile.
Yeah, I didn't know about that until maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and Athena explained to me. She sent me a whole bunch of leaks. I didn't know, even like the over sexualization of black women. Like there, I get like the idea that women, black women were hypersexual compared to white women. I didn't know any of this stuff, but I spent 3 hours just being disgusted, link after link that Athena sent me. But yeah,
who cares about race, Big Block? Yeah, we do recognize and celebrate the differences between each other. Like, absolutely.
You ever met somebody?
Acknowledge it.
Have you ever met somebody
That was
like,
the old "I'm colorblind" argument.
Yeah, you ever met somebody that advocated for like racial equality, that said we didn't that they didn't care about race? I've never nobody that makes that statement is somebody that is one, educated on race, and two, somebody that cares about equality. You cannot say that. There is no grounds to say, like, who cares about race. If you say that in and of itself, I don't know who said that, that's racist. I may not be calling you racist despite the fact that you may be racist, but that in and of itself is racist. The inability, or not inability, the blanket refusal to acknowledge injustice is racism. That's a thing. Like, I don't know what it is about these MAGA Republicans that think, like, if they just make it through the day without saying the N-word, that they're not racist. Like, that if they don't look at a black person and immediately throw up, that they're not racist. Like, they think, is that the line? It's like, I don't own any slaves. Like, that's what they think. Oh, we freed the slaves. We did Jim Crow already. And now, like, just remember, it's your party now. Every fucking day, Charlie Kirk gets on Twitter, and every third post from him is just showing somebody,
the replacement theory.
Somebody that was elevated in their position. It's like, oh, this person was hired. This is the new CEO. And you know who he only focuses on? New CEOs, or people who are elevated, who are generally women and generally a person of color. Every single day. And you're supposed to, and then I'm supposed to take you seriously when you're like, it's not about race. It's always about race for you. This is the same as it's the same as the trans issue for me. Like, almost all the responses, anything that the people on the left have done when it comes to promoting equality, especially along racial lines, is in response abhorrent happening to somebody in a minority community. Every single time it's a response. It's never that they're forcing something down your throat. It's always always a response to something awful that's happened. And Republicans like, who ended slavery? Was Abraham Lincoln a Republican? How many more of these morons don't every day there's some other moron that doesn't know about the party switch, and you'll see it on the lives every time. Like they'll say it, and the whole panel will just be like, "Oh my God, we got to explain it to another person now."
Oh, Big Block has another comment. You can come up here anytime you want and make your case. We welcome it.
It's not hard, Big Block. It's not hard. Do you see me? I'm so fucking white. Like, I'm so white. It is not hard to be white and acknowledge that things happen to minority communities that don't happen to us. And it doesn't hurt me.
It's hard
It doesn't
for
hurt
Big
me
Block.
one bit. Like, treating other people kindly. There's not like this like basket of kindness, and there's only so much, and once it's out there's no more kindness. Like, you can be kind and you can be fair and you can be just to everybody. So giving justice to people who aren't receiving justice does not take away your justice. You're gonna be fine, dude. I mean, you're not, because you've lost it, but it will be fine for everybody else.
Everyone else is good. But yeah, so then this is going on all day. So massage. Oh, well, look who's here. I thought we were friends.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
So good.
Good. So,
Oh, yeah.
so you don't, do you think like racism doesn't exist anymore, or what's the contention you have there?
I mean, the only reason racism still exists is because y'all keep making it a thing.
There we go. What do you mean?
Stop talking about race every day. Everybody just lives their life like normal, and it won't be a problem.
So when there's a act of violence that is perpetrated with a racist motive, we should just ignore that?
Well, how come we only talk about acts of violence against a particular race when it's white on black? We don't ever talk about black on white.
We talk about it all the time. What the fuck are you talking about?
Did you ever talk about the all those 10 black kids beating the shit out of the one white kid and killing him?
We actually did discuss that, yeah.
Or for half a...
Do you talk about the Gilbert Goons?
For about 2 minutes, but then we're going to talk about everything else for...
Yeah, tell me. Well, if you've ever watched my show, you know that I don't spend a great deal of time on race.
Yeah,
and we don't spend a great deal of time on race issues. But tell me about the Gilbert Goons.
I don't care about the Gilbert Goons.
Well, tell me about them.
I don't know about them. I don't care about them.
Oh, you don't know about a group of white kids where I live that have been going around beating up minorities? You don't know about that?
You're saying that
yeah. See, why do you only know?
Minorities don't go around in Chicago beating the shit out of white people all day long?
Well, let me ask you a question. Why do you think it is that you only seem to know about the instances the opposite way?
Oh, I hear about all kinds of stuff.
Well, you didn't know about the Gilbert
But
Goons?
I just wonder why we always got to talk about the white on black crimes.
It's not talking about white on black
I don't
crimes.
care
This is
about
this is the part that you don't
It
understand.
doesn't affect me.
This is the part that you don't understand.
You're absolutely right. It doesn't affect you, and that's a privilege. But that doesn't mean that other people aren't being adversely affected.
It's not white privilege. White privilege doesn't
I said
exist.
it is a privilege.
White privilege
and
isn't a thing. It doesn't exist.
let me explain some. And also, I want to get away from just, you're trying to focus on, so I guess, like violence, because that wasn't what I was discussing up here, right? I'm talking about a system, right? When the Constitution recognized who at the beginning of our country? White male landowners. That's who had the vote.
It didn't ever say
Then
white
there was
male
the three.
landowners.
Stop. No, I said who did it recognize? Who did it recognize? Who counted?
That's what you. But that's what you're
no,
interpreting
answer the question.
it as.
Who did the Constitution recognize?
Well, just because that was the
Who?
case. That
No,
at a
answer.
particular time.
Don't say anything. Answer the question. Who did the Constitution recognize? Who counted?
It possibly was white male landowners.
Okay,
but
thank
they
you.
didn't
Thank you.
specify that.
And I'm
They didn't
talking about
specify
that system.
That's what you're
that our country
interpreting
was
it as
built
that.
off of. That system that our country was built off of. Since that time, other groups, women, minority groups, the LGBTQ have been fighting for their equal rights to exist.
Everybody's
Right?
always
And
had
to be
rights. It
counted.
doesn't-
And
it
for our
never-
votes to be counted. and for
Hey,
our votes to be
well, your
counted.
votes have
Those are the
always counted.
facts. This country is built off systemic. I'm not talking about hate in your individual heart. That's what I'm trying to make clear. I'm not talking about people in hoods. I'm talking about the system this country was built off of, and how since that point, minority groups have been fighting for their right to be counted, to have the same rights that white male landowners were afforded in the beginning.
Okay, well, everybody got those rights 70 years ago, so why are we still talking about it?
Wait,
if everybody has the
Big
same
Block, let
rights
me-
and everybody's equal now.
Big Block, let me ask you a question. Do you understand the difference between systemic racism and inalienable rights? Or constitutionally granted rights?
Well, everybody had the rights when the Constitution was written. It
No,
didn't
it said men.
specify
It says
white
men.
male.
It says men.
Every document that is written for the government has always said men. It didn't specifically say white men,
Yeah.
white women, black men,
Yeah,
black
that's-
women. It didn't
Why-
say any of that. It just
well,
said
why?
men.
Why do you think? Wait, why did it
'cause
say
it's
men?
It's a general term.
It's a general
not-
term.
Yeah,
but
they
is it
weren't
still a general?
specifying anybody.
Oh, hold
Instead
on.
of
Is it- hold on.
specifying
Hold on.
something, they
Listen. I heard you. You don't need to say the same thing 5 trillion times. Okay, I heard you. It says men. I'm asking you the question: why did documents, specifically documents previous to, let's say, 100 years ago, almost always say men when referring to rights?
to generalize it and make it simplify it.
Well, let's see. Well, let's see. Did women always have rights in this country? The same rights as men?
Just because they were
Just
acknowledged doesn't
for the
mean they
love of
didn't
for
have
the
the rights.
Big Block. Do me a favor. Try and talk to me like a human, and just hold on. Just respond to what I say. These aren't gotcha questions. Just let's have a conversation. Did women always have the same rights as men?
Yes.
They did. Could women
Yes.
own land? Well, then why did they need to be given the right to vote through an amendment?
Oh, personally, everything after the 10th.
Not personally. This isn't personally. If women had the same rights as men, why did we have a women's suffrage movement and then put in an amendment that allows women to vote?
To appease to the women, so that way they had
The right
something
to
on
vote.
paper. They already had the right.
No, they couldn't vote.
just-
Oh, we couldn't vote.
Big
Stop
Block.
lying.
You think that was ceremonial? Do you think women were voting, but because it wasn't in
just
the
had-
Hold on, I'm asking. Let me ask the question because I want to make sure. Do you think women were allowed to vote, but they just put the amendment in there because the Constitution said men and not women?
Well, I mean, has women never voted prior to the amendment happening?
Correct. Yeah, women were not allowed to vote prior to that amendment. That's why that amendment
exists. Can you go through and
exists.
specifically, so you can go through the last 300 years and never find a single woman that voted or fucking owned land in that time?
You potentially, yeah, legally you couldn't. Yeah, so there could be women who maybe
Where's the
voted in
legality
their.
of it that says
Hold
they
on,
couldn't
hold on. This is crazy.
Yeah, it really is.
You're now denying that women in this, like your ability to rewrite history so that you can keep
so he
your
can
current
remain
opinions
he can be a
is
victim
absolutely
in his
insane.
own mind, so he can maintain his victimhood. It's unbelievable. Women were not allowed. That's why there was a suffrage movement. We did not have the vote.
Who's a victim? I'm not a victim of anything.
Oh my goodness, sir!
You are a victim,
I've
sir.
never met somebody that's more of a victim. You're so mad that you get upset when other people are victimized. You're like, that's not
But
fair.
I'm the victim. I'm a victim.
Nobody's being victimized.
Nobody? Okay,
Nobody.
explain to me this. There was a study done. I think it was in Georgia. It was and I believe it was over like 10-ish years. But they took a look at who they pulled over, and they found out that during the day, black people were far more likely to be pulled over than white people, despite the demographics being fairly similar. But at night, when you couldn't identify the skin color of the driver, those numbers came back to around 50-50. Why do you think that happened?
I mean, if basically if they wouldn't pull them over if they knew they weren't going to find anything. Most of the time
Well,
they're going to find illegal weapons or illegal drugs. So that's why they pull them over.
Bad news, Big Block. They didn't. In fact, most of the time they weren't charged. Most of the time there were civil. You either had a civil infraction. Wait, hold on. Wait till people finish questions, okay? Most of the time these people weren't charged. But the question is, the statistical outlier here is that during the day, when you can clearly see the skin color of a person driving, black people were something like 30% or 40% more likely to be pulled over than white people. But at night, when it was too dark to recognize people's skin color, it was roughly the same.
If they don't live up to the stereotype, they stop getting pulled over.
Let me ask you this question. Do you believe racists exist?
Not as prevalent and as much
That's not
as
what I'm
y'all
asking.
say.
I'm not asking how prevalent it is. I'm asking, do you believe they exist?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you consider the white nationalists racist?
I mean,
come on, man. This is an easy one. White national. Okay.
Guys, tap the screen. Let's get to 90K.
The 3K group. Would you consider the 3K group racist?
oh yeah.
Okay, great. Did you know that the 3K group for decades had a plan, and they promoted this plan, and they were successful in this plan of infiltrating virtually every police department. They wanted to make sure that 3K people were involved in every police department. And you saw a huge percentage of triple K members in police departments. Now, do you think once they got in the police department, they just stopped being triple K members?
I mean, I just want to know why we always talk.
I feel like no, don't run from this.
I'm not running from
it. Then let's have a conversation. These are not gotcha questions. I'm asking you. This isn't a gotcha. Do you think once they got in the police department, they stopped being racist?
No, the ideology.
Why do you think they wanted to? Why do you think they wanted to infiltrate the police department?
Same reason why black people are racist.
No. I didn't ask why people are racist. Nope. Hear the question one more time. Why do you think they wanted to infiltrate the police departments?
I mean, it could be to go after black people.
You know the answer, right?
It could be to go after black people and minorities, but that's
they wanted the ability.
You can interpret it as that, but you can't specifically say that's what it is.
You can specifically say that because we have documentation from them laying out what their plan was. They wanted to make it possible so they could still keep black people down, but they could do it from a legal perspective. They'd have the legal backing of a badge and a gun and a union, so they were more protected when they did their racial crimes. See, if you don't have a badge and a gun, you're not nearly as protected. But then you started to see things like qualified immunity. You had police unions that they started referring to themselves as a brotherhood. You see things like thin blue line, where you turn the police into the victims. All of this is done to obfuscate from the fact that they are filled with racists. And
how does them calling themselves a brotherhood mean they're racist?
I didn't say that.
Black Panthers are racist.
Listen, pal.
Black people say they're in a brotherhood.
Listen, pal. I call everybody brother. I'm not making the claim that saying you're a brotherhood makes you racist. I'm saying by saying you're a brotherhood.
You just said, though.
No, I'm not. No, I'm explaining what I said. By saying you're a brotherhood, you agree to protect each other. And we have case after case after case of police departments lying to protect each other, calling it a brotherhood, refusing to rat each other out for crimes because it's a brotherhood, when it's not a brotherhood. It never should have been a brotherhood. They are civil servants that we hire to enforce our laws.
Okay, and them pulling people over is enforcing the laws.
But would you agree that if you and I lived in the same neighborhood, and let's say the entire police department was liberal soy boy cucks like myself, and we live in the same neighborhood, and we drive the same road every day, and we go virtually the same speed limit every day, we both go 7 miles an hour over the speed limit, and you get pulled over 40% more than I do, would it be fair to say that there's probably a bias against you because of your political ideology? because we're doing the same thing.
I got pulled over maybe for a tail. I could have
No,
been
no, no,
pulled
no.
over for
I'm
not
saying
using
no,
the
no, no.
turn
Listen,
signal,
hold on.
or-
I'm saying okay. I understand what you're saying. Like, it's possible that that would happen, but then you'd have to explain why at night it doesn't happen. Do black people suddenly fix their turn signals at night?
I mean, who's
Do
to
they
say
suddenly
don't?
fix a headlight at night?
Maybe they use them more often at night so they don't get pulled over.
So the thing is the problem with your thinking is you want to believe racism is over. And I agree with you that we are so much further along as a country than we were, like, let's just say during the Jim Crow era. We're further along as a country than we were 20 years ago. But the problem I have as a former conservative, speaking to conservatives now, is that you guys is that sometimes I think you think we're there. And the truth of the matter is, Big Block, we will never have equality until everybody has equality. So if you are not advocating for people who are not treated equally, you don't care about equality. And at
We do
some
have
point,
equality.
we don't.
And can everybody vote? Does everybody have the right to vote?
No.
Does everybody have? What do you mean no? Who doesn't have the right to vote?
Felons, people under the age of 18.
Well, but they're a felon.
Yeah.
They knew what.
You asked the
Why would
question.
a felon?
I was just answering your question honestly.
Does it state in the Constitution that felons don't get the right to vote?
I don't remember where that comes from. Which is that where that exactly comes from? But weirdly, you can hold office if you're a felon.
But if
Doesn't matter. I just answered your question honestly. So what's your point? You said, does everybody have the right to vote?
So,
I said
yeah,
no.
because we're equal. Everybody has equality. A felon.
What if you live? Wait, hold
lost
on.
all of his rights when he became a felon and decided to be a criminal. He shouldn't
No,
have
they
any
didn't.
rights
No,
left.
does that felon still have the freedom of speech?
Oh yeah, I mean for the most part.
Does that felon still have? Yeah, does that felon still have the right to own property?
I mean, I guess.
Does that felon still have? I mean, they still have their life, liberty, and pursuit of property is what it was really supposed to be, right?
But they lose their right to vote. They lose their right to be able to own a firearm.
Yeah,
They knew all that stuff when they became a felon.
maybe. But either way, you asked if everybody has the right to vote, and I said no.
So
you agree?
So you're
that,
talking about a small percentage of people don't have a right that they lost willingly for doing stupid actions.
Perfect. Now explain to me why black people have lost their right to drive down the road and not be bothered by police. What have black people done to deserve that?
They haven't lost the right.
Well, then why did they get pulled over at higher numbers? And again, remember, during the day, higher numbers. At night, lower. It's about even. You still haven't explained that disparity to me. And look, Big Block, I mean this sincerely. This is not a place you should double down on. This is an opportunity for you to recognize that while not like white privilege doesn't mean that like you have an easy life. It doesn't mean that bad things can't happen to you. It means that there are specific instances, in this case, driving in certain places where you are less likely to be pulled over because of your skin color. It's not something that we need to be ashamed of. It's not something that we need to constantly talk about, but recognizing that there are times in this country when being white is a benefit to you, that doesn't hurt you to say that. And what it should do is just help you recognize that, like, hey, that really shouldn't happen. Just because I was born white doesn't mean I should get pulled over less. And you can stand up with everybody else and say, hey, to police officers who are pulling over black people at a higher rate, stop that. Like, we all should be equal. And that's I feel is the difference coming from the Republican Party to the Democrat Party, is that we recognize that. We recognize and focus on places where there is injustice, because you really don't have justice when you have injustice. They don't go together. So we're just advocating that justice be served across the board.
Can I say so? Yeah. And I just want to talk about, like, when you should read the book. I don't know if you read, but The New Jim Crow, because what the point is even though the Civil Rights Act happened, right? What happens is through mass incarcerations, African Americans are 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than white Americans, 20 times more likely to be incarcerated specifically for drug offenses. And in doing so, Once they are incarcerated, again, at 5 times the rate of white Americans, they become what? Second-class citizens who lose the right to vote. And don't get me started on false convictions in this country. We have 25% of the world's prisoners. We use it as a slave labor pipeline, and we use it as a pipeline to keep the African American community as second-class citizens. Just because of the Civil Rights Act, slavery hasn't ended. African Americans as disenfranchised second-class citizens hasn't ended that. It's important that you acknowledge that and look at the statistical facts of the situation.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that majority of the prison population is black. So
That's not what she said.
I can't
Wait,
go off of what you're saying.
Wait, hold on. We're talking about
This is from a very famous book that won every award. It's called The New Jim Crow. Read it.
I can't believe I can't go off. I can't believe you say a 13% of the population.
Listen, I know what the truth is. I do research. I speak in facts. I'm telling you where you can get this information. But you're choosing to live in ignorance. That's your choice, but you have no idea what you're talking about.
Why not check the facts, Big Block? Rather than say,
I'll check the facts, okay. But I know y'all's facts are biased to
what?
The left. All your facts are.
Like
I hear
what?
Y'all every day. Y'all are biased to the left.
Let me ask you something. Does bias mean that it's untrue?
Yeah, because you're
okay.
You're picking,
so I'm a hold on. I'm a 49ers fan. I'm a big 49ers fan. When I watch 49ers games, I'll regularly feel like they're being cheated, and I think the 49ers are the best team in the NFL. Now I'm biased, but they're the favorite to win the Super Bowl. Everybody else also agrees that they're the best team in the NFL, right? So my bias influenced me and said like the 49ers are the best team in the NFL, but I still wasn't wrong. Right? You can be both biased and right. And I agree with you. Both Felice and I have a left-leaning bias. We always will. And there will be times when we will have a bias with an opinion and we may be wrong with our opinion. But facts don't have bias. So if we're talking about just numbers, there is no bias in numbers. What you have to do is then you take the numbers that you're looking at and you look for bias. And that's what this critical race theory is. That's what critical theory is. That you look at the numbers, you collect the numbers, and then you just try and find, like, let's make sure that they're within this subset of numbers, that there's no discrimination based on race. And occasionally, in certain instances, you will find discrimination or not discrimination. You'll find like an outlier. For example, this data that Felice just brought up. What were the exact numbers, Felice?
Well, I was bringing up that Black or African Americans,
rates.
Yeah, 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than white Americans, and 20 times more likely to be incarcerated for drug offenses specifically than white Americans.
Okay, so with those being the numbers, then Big Block, what we need to do is we need to say, okay, there's obviously a disparity there. So let's find out what the disparity is. And I know that a lot of people on the right will say, Ben Shapiro's famous for saying this. Charlie Kirk is famous for saying this, saying, oh, well, it's not our fault that black people are committing more crimes. Well, can you take it a step further? Why are black people committing more crimes? You can look at certain areas
because but think about it. You can't get a job if you're a felon, right? That's another thing that's infected. Employment. That's another way that Jim Crow, the new Jim Crow, keeps African Americans as second class citizens.
I've worked at places that hired felons. So
the point I was getting at, hold on, Big Block, hold on. The point I was getting at here is same thing as our example where we live in the same neighborhood. If the police are focused on you, if they're aware of where you're going and they're not aware of where I'm going, and they're particularly watching you, you're far more likely to get pulled over. Even if you and I speed at the same rate, even if you and I don't wear our seatbelts at the same rate, even if you and I litter at the same rate, if they are watching you and not me, I'm not going to be caught, right?
Well, I can't look at everybody at the same time.
Right. So then we have to look at, are white and black neighborhoods being policed at the same level? The answer to that is no. We know empirically that resources and police forces are overwhelmingly pushed towards black neighborhoods.
Well, that's where the crime is. That's why they're
Well,
there.
but hold on. But then when you look at marijuana, like if you look at marijuana, for example, that's the number one. Black and white people use marijuana at roughly the exact same rate. But you're something like 8 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession if you're black. And does that necessarily mean that the police officer who pulled that black person over and arrested them, does that mean that that police officer definitely is racist? No. That's why we call it systemic racism, because the system is putting police officers in areas where they are specifically watching and targeting black people. So the problem that and this was difficult for me to learn coming from the right to the left. I had to recognize that the system itself was set up to put more black people in jail. And whether, I don't have to decide whether or not the people who wrote the laws are racist or not. I don't really care about that. I'm not worried about pinpointing individual people and calling them racist. I'm just looking at a system, and the system is racist. So if you are a police officer and you're operating within a system that targets black people, you are part of a systemically racist system. And I think that's where we get lost, is we're not calling everybody racist. We're saying the system is set up to hurt minority communities. I mean, like, if you were a police officer and let's say you worked exclusively in black neighborhoods, almost all of your arrests would be black people. Does that mean that you're racist? No, it doesn't. But if the state that you're in is sending all of its resources to black neighborhoods, and it's black people that are bearing the brunt of all this legislation, all this over policing, and they are being disproportionately jailed for crimes that we commit at the same rate, that is systemic racism.
It's the same way in the medical field. Think about it. It's not explicit bias, right? It's not someone saying, oh, I can't stand these people. I'm going out and I'm going to police them harder than I'm going to police other people. It's implicit. It's subconscious, right? Like we see in the medical field. It's dangerous for African Americans to go to the doctor, but not because doctors are sitting there like, oh, I'm racist and I'm going to disproportionately hurt the African American community today. It is literal implicit subconscious bias. There are medical studies in medical journals all over the world about this. You can easily look it up.
You there, Big Block?
Yeah, I lost you guys for a second there.
That's all right. Does that make sense, though?
I mean, it makes perfect sense. But if you're, I'm just seeing it. I understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying, I get that they're policing urban areas more, but there's a reason for it. That's why they go there. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, but sometimes, look, sometimes that's
issue.
true. Sometimes that's true, that there is more crime in these areas. But then, like, here's the other part that you have to do. And this is, I'm telling you, dude, it's learning this stuff is fucking devastating. But a lot of times I think we stop where we think we have the answer. So you're saying, like, all right, well, they are going where more crime is committed. The next question should be, why is more crime being committed? And there are historical injustices for why crime is committed in black neighborhoods at higher rates as well. When people are poor, they commit more crime. That's just it's statistically true. If you look at every major city in this country and the way that they built housing, we used to do a lot for public housing. We specifically, like if you look at San Francisco has a very deep port. And so there's a lot of international boats that can come into San Francisco that can't come from other places. So San Francisco was a big port city, and there were a lot of people working in San Francisco. And then we started having wars, and we had drafts. So between Vietnam and World War II, you had a lot of people leave and go to war. And you had people from predominantly black states come in to take those jobs. So if you look at San Francisco and Oakland, which are just right across the bay from each other, black people came into San Francisco and they took up those jobs while there were a lot of people in war. When the people got back from war, they didn't want to live around black people anymore. So our federal government, who was providing housing for both white and black people in San Francisco, made segregated housing, and they moved the black housing across the bay into Oakland. And you can historically look at how underfunded those houses were. The square footage of the houses were smaller. The construction was worse. And then and therefore the property values were lower. And then that bleeds into the schools, which are funded by property taxes. So now you have Oakland with lower property taxes, property tax income, meaning they have lower funded schools. So now you have people who are less educated, which means they're less likely to make a lot of money. And then the CIA goes to Oakland and they try this new thing where they're just going to dump crack in Oakland because they're working with the Contras and they need a place so that they can dump crack. So now you dump the crack in black neighborhoods because they didn't care about black neighborhoods. And suddenly you have people hooked on drugs and selling drugs. They're poor. So the people that sell drugs for the first time in their life are making good money because they can't make good money any other way in Oakland. And now the police come in. Then suddenly there's an epidemic. And now the police come in and they start over policing. They start arresting people for possession. They start stop and frisk. They're invading people's privacy. Illegal searches and seizures. People are going to fathers are going to jail because men are more likely to be prosecuted for drug crimes. So fathers, who at the time are really the only people working in Oakland, are going to jail. And now you have mothers without jobs, without an education, trying to raise children, and now they have to depend on the state. And it's this cycle of poverty that leads to crime. So again, I agree with you. There are times when crime is being committed at higher levels, but if we go further than that and we figure out why crime is committed at higher levels, we should probably recognize that we did a lot of that. And there's probably some stuff we need to do to undo that. That's why when we talk about funding, even Trump, he talked about funding places. He did his opportunity zones. Even Trump recognized this. Even Trump recognized that historically we have created areas that have a cycle of poverty, and poverty and crime go together. But we did cause that, and we didn't just put poor people in a place. We put black people in one place and then made them poor.
Trump was part of that, denying mortgages, right? Redlining, denying mortgages and services.
Oh, redlining isn't a thing anymore. It doesn't.
Yeah, I know that, but we're talking about historically. That's what we're talking. That's what I'm talking about. Or the not in my backyard. Wait, hold on. Let me finish talking. Please don't talk. So that's what I'm talking about. Like the not in my backyard. Why are all the unhoused right in downtown Los Angeles? Because that's the only place they're allowed to be. That's why people in a cycle of poverty are herded into the only places they are allowed to exist.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be in downtown LA if we stopped giving money to Ukraine, and we could house everybody.
Well, but
we could house all the homeless.
Well, we can go to homeless next. But do you understand what we're saying about like the cycle and the history of this country and the cycle of poverty and how I
get it, but they don't help the situation.
Sure, but also
if you're complaining about we're this and that, but then you go out, you go through those areas in the inner city and they're scum, they're trash. There's graffiti everywhere. There's trash on the streets. Nobody wants to go through there. So why, instead of saying I'm oppressed and then talking about we're held back, we can't do nothing, stop destroying everything. And
it's interesting. It's interesting that you bring that.
Get more funding and get more money to your area.
Well, that's a bizarre thing, but you're kind of like you actually kind of have a point there. There have been studies done that when states invest in poor communities and they go and they clean them up and they paint things, and they repair buildings, they repair parks, they make everything nicer, that crime actually drops. It's because people feel a little more like they feel a little more hope being there, and again, it attracts investment. But again, we're talking about communities full of poor people. They're not going to use their own money that they don't have to invest in cleaning up their community and making it look better.
And that's the issue with making housing a capitalistic industry, because when it is, right, then we have gentrification. We're pricing those people. When we fix up the neighborhoods, we start flipping houses, we actually price the people in poverty, they're out, and they can no longer be, that's another place they cannot remain.
Well, I mean, I don't believe there should be anybody should be poor. If you have the willpower and the drive, you should be able to get a job and
do you think you should be poor? What if you just want to work 40 hours a week and you want to spend a lot of time with your family? Do you think you should be like, do you think anybody should work 40 hours a week and be poor?
I mean, I feel like if you want stuff, if you can't live off of 40 hours a week,
yeah,
I don't believe if you can't live off of 40 hours a week, then if that's what you choose to do and be poor, then don't talk about your being oppressed. And it's blame it on everybody else because you're not wanting to do anything.
Well,
for
what
yourself.
if the 40-hour week? Well, what if that's the only job that you have available to you?
It's not there. There's always another job out there, even if you were to find something for part time. There's always something. But
why don't we just make it easier for people to have good paying jobs? Why don't we make it more likely that people are going to have good paying jobs? Because the reality is, dude, like, not everybody wants to go out and build something for themselves. Not everybody wants to do that. A lot of people just want to exist. They want to enjoy. You have one life. They want to enjoy this life with their family, their friends. They may want to see the world. And if they're willing to work for 40 hours and give that much of their life to somebody else, I do think that it's fair to say somebody working 40 hours should not be should be able to live, and they should be able to they should be able to go see the doctor. They should be able to take a vacation once in a while. They should be able to enjoy the weekends with their family. They work hard. I've never seen a 40-hour a week job that wasn't hard. There are some that are harder than others, but working 40 hours a week is hard.
And they're compensated. If it's a harder job than others, they're usually compensated for it.
Not always, man. Like I worked in some some sales environments where the job really wasn't that hard, and I was compensated really, really well. However, if you've ever worked like being a barista at like a busy coffee shop, that job is fucking hard. That job sucks. That job's hard, but I was making way more than somebody who was making a cup of coffee.
I wouldn't say a barista is a hard job.
It's harder than than sitting in a call center taking inbound.
Of all the things to say, you being a barista.
Yeah, people like calling liberals, like they always make fun of them for being baristas and working in a coffee. But I'm just saying, like working in fast food, that's harder than a sales job. I didn't say it's hard. Listen, hold on. I'm not saying it's hard. I'm saying there are jobs that pay well that are easier than those jobs. I honest to God, like I worked in multiple sales organizations in leadership positions where we were told that like, hey, when you're hiring, like we're not saying don't hire black people, but make sure that like on the phone they don't sound hood, that they don't sound uneducated on that's what we were told. I worked in door-to-door sales for a long time. Like when we hired black people, we had to tell them to dress differently, to speak differently.
Well, you don't want someone coming to your knock on your door with their pants halfway hanging down.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, obviously you want them to dress professional.
Yeah,
it's
but
no different than telling a white person they got to dress professional.
But you just brought up a racial stereotype.
It's not
again. But like, don't have braids in your hair.
I didn't say anything about braids.
Don't have tattoos.
About that.
Well, but other people did. We were working, like I was working in the Midwest.
But people are discriminated against for things like tattoos, for African American hairstyles in corporate America. You are passed over for jobs for having African American. It's a barrier to entry. Not having the correct clothing, right? Not being able to afford the right clothing to show up the interview is a barrier to entry. That's what we're saying.
If you don't have the drive, you want to work 40 hours a week. You can't say anything that you're broke, and expect the handouts from people.
Look, I
That's
agree.
all
If
you
you're
wanna do.
not willing to work, if you're not willing to work and you just want to live your life in this system and you just want handouts, I agree with you. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that like there are millions of people specifically, like in black neighborhoods specifically, housing has to be subsidized because nobody makes enough money to afford like quality housing in those neighborhoods. And so our government, rather than doing something about getting better paying jobs, has decided we are going to subsidize these neighborhoods instead. Meaning we're gonna give money to the landlords so that they can keep rent lower, and the government is paying out money to keep rent lower in those neighborhoods. Where if the government wanted something more like what you want, we would advocate for better paying jobs. We would advocate for non-discriminatory hiring practices. But every time we try and do that, it seems it's always the Republicans standing in the way, feeling like it's an attack on white people. Charlie Kirk every single day is doing this. Every single day, Charlie Kirk complains how black people are getting like high-paying jobs. But if you go to his Twitter right now, you'll see for the last 2 weeks, it's nothing but him complaining about minority people, usually women, getting high-paying jobs, and him saying, "Oh, this is all affirmative action. This is
And
all
DEI.
DEI." Yeah.
That's what Fox News did about Boeing and Alaska Airlines. You know that plane that came apart in the air a couple of days ago? Well, I had to watch Fox News last night. They were like, we've done some research. That's the news story. We've done some research on Alaska Airlines and Boeing. Turns out they have DEI hiring practice. Then I'm listening to Junior's podcast, and what is he doing? He's ranting because there's not enough white male pilots because of DEI hiring practices, and he no longer feels safe in the air.
I have a lot of friends who are pilots. This is anecdotal, but Phoenix is a big hub for Southwest. So I know a good amount of Southwest pilots. And I was asking one of my friends, I was like, do you ever get scared when you're landing? Like it's a really, really windy. I was like, how difficult is that? And he's like, honestly, everybody can fly planes. The plane basically does. He's like, planes now, they basically
They
do
land
everything
themselves.
He's like, you don't have to do anything really. He's like, he was in the Air Force, and he's like, that was different. Like that was real. But he's like, yeah, you basically don't have to do anything to land a plane. And he's like, anytime you hear of a plane crashing, that's somebody who's like asleep at the wheel, probably like on some sort of drugs, or like they fell asleep. He's like, it is super hard to crash a plane. But does that make sense? Like I'm not saying that. I do think that sometimes on the right, because of the information that you're fed, you think that the leftists that we're just saying that you guys are all racist, that everything is race-based, and it's not true. But we do often highlight racial issues because it's our belief, like I said at the beginning, that you don't have justice until everybody has justice. You don't have equality until everybody has equality, and it's important because if we can still discriminate in this country, there can come a point where you get discriminated against, which is why you have so many people on the right talking about being replaced. Why do you think they're afraid of being replaced?
I don't care if anybody's replaced personally.
Okay, why do you think like Charlie Kirk talks about being replaced all the time? Specifically, white people being replaced.
I mean, I don't know if he's crying about affirmative action. I agree with him on that aspect that we got rid of it, because everybody should be hired based on merit, not on skin color, gender, anything on that aspect. So I agree that affirmative action is gone.
Well, affirmative action largely just look. There's problems with affirmative action. We can be honest about that. But affirmative action also addressed a real problem where people wouldn't even consider hiring black people or women for certain jobs. And historically, black people and women could not be qualified to work those jobs because nobody would give them the prerequisite jobs that gave them the experience needed to have those jobs. So affirmative action was necessary in order to make things more equal. I agree with you, though, that I'm not going to tell you that there aren't corporations out there who make hires just for looks. They do that because it's important to them to have that image out there. I won't deny that that hasn't happened. I won't deny that there is probably a black female who got a job that she was not qualified for just based on optics. But at the same time, I'm also going to acknowledge that for centuries, black women were not even allowed to be in the discussion for that job. And the only reason that person is even in the discussion now is because of affirmative action. So everything has problems. Every policy we could ever put into place has problems. The question is, like, why do you think the right is focusing on the problems? Why aren't they focusing on the good that it's done? Why aren't they saying, like, hey, here's a problem, here's how we might tweak it a little bit to fix it? Instead, they're telling you that you're going to be replaced. And they're talking about skin color. The only people talking about being replaced right now are on the right, and it is exclusively based on skin color. It's Charlie Kirk, it's Jim Jordan, it's Fox News, it's Steve Bannon, it's Donald Trump saying the blood of our country is being poisoned. If being a minority is no problem, why do you think all the leaders on the right are afraid of being a minority?
I mean, nobody wants to be a minority.
Why?
See, you get it. You know, intrinsically, deep down, you get it.
Yeah. Why don't you want to be a minority?
I just don't feel like as much as everybody wants to throw the minority word around, I just don't feel like it's
not that great of a deal, is it? It doesn't. It doesn't look that great.
It doesn't seem. Yeah, nobody wants to be a minority. Those are your words. Why? Why don't you want to be a minority?
I mean, if it comes to that situation, it is what it is.
I know. I get that, but I'm asking about what you said. You said nobody wants to be a minority, and I'm asking why. I'm not saying that you won't handle it well if you become the minority. I'm not saying that you'll lose it or that you won't be able to survive. I understand that. I think you're somebody who likely no matter what comes your way, you're going to push through it and you're going to survive and you're going to make it work. I believe that when you say that about yourself. I'm just asking why you think you wouldn't want to be a minority and why so many people are afraid of becoming a minority.
I don't know what to tell you on that one.
It's because the things that you want and your voice becomes less powerful, right?
I don't believe all that. I don't believe that's the case.
Okay, then why wouldn't you want to be a minority?
I don't know. Maybe there's a stigma around it that everybody looks down on you. I don't know, but yeah. It is what it is.
And maybe people would make rules about you as a minority, and it wouldn't just say all the white guys like me and you, Big Block. It wouldn't say we're going to round up all the white guys and we're going to put them in jail. It might say something like, hey, we're not going to let any of these white guys be president of a university. Or we're not going to give any protection to white guys, or we're going to underfund the school of these white guys. Their kids, they're going to go to schools where they don't get as much funding. And we're not just going to say they don't get the funding. What we're going to do is we're going to increase all the property values in Black and brown people communities. We're going to invest heavily in there. We're going to put in nice city centers. We're going to put in great parks. We're going to give tax breaks to businesses like big corporations, so they come here and promote high-paying jobs. And in your community, we're going to put up some liquor stores and some check cashing places and potentially a Walmart. And so there's nowhere in your community where you can now make a solid living. You've got to go outside of your community. But when you leave your community, by the way, you will look different than everybody else. When you show up for your job interview, you're going to be the only white person there. And we know how these people have voted historically to keep your white community where it's at. And it's not that they hate you. They want you to just pick yourself up by your bootstraps, but you got to stop committing. You got to stop committing crimes. You got to get out there and get into our community. And if you assimilate into the black and brown community, and you start listening to the rap music, and you lower your pants a little bit, and whatever your stereotype you want to use there, then when you fit in and you assimilate to their culture, then they will accept you with open arms. But if you show up in your Wranglers and your work boots and your MAGA hat, like, no, nobody's going to hire you.
I mean, if they want to invest into the area and build and make property taxes go up, that benefits everybody.
Yeah, but they're only doing that in the black and brown communities, not your community. So your public schools in your community, and by the way, when they raise the property values in their community, that's going to make your property value even less. And because there's no good jobs in your community, nobody's going to be making a lot of money. So collecting taxes is going to be very difficult. So property taxes will go down, which means the quality of your school, the quality of the education for your children will go down. And because you're poor and your children are poor, and they'll look at these other communities where people have stuff, it's likely that your children, your neighbors, your friends are going to start committing petty crime. They might start selling weed on the side. You know, they might go to their job 40 hours a week, and then they might sell weed on the side, because now they can take their family on a vacation. And they might, you know, maybe your kid wants some snacks at the gas station or the convenience store, but you can't give them any money because you're broke. So maybe then your kid who doesn't have full meals might steal some food out of that gas station. And suddenly you are the problem. Suddenly there's all these crimes that are happening in your neighborhood. But when you're in that neighborhood, you kind of understand it, because you're looking at the other neighborhood and you're like, well, this is bullshit. They get everything. Nobody helps us out. I can't even provide for my family. So yeah, I'm not going to lose my goddamn mind when my kid goes and steals a microwave burrito from the 7-Eleven. That doesn't bother me. Like, I'll talk to him, but like, it's I get it.
Well, then the state needs to step in. If there's underfunded schools and school districts, the government needs to help them out.
Yeah. Well, I think what in this situation,
and that happened in Houston.
So don't you think the government in this case should look at
Guys, tap the screen for Jay. That was great, Jay.
In this case, don't you think the government should look at the disparity in your white neighborhood where you're completely underfunded, and they look at the black and brown neighborhoods where they have all the money, and the government should say, like, this is obvious. Like, obviously they're discriminating against this white neighborhood, and the policies we put in place made it so this white neighborhood is poor. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pull some of the funding out of these black and brown neighborhoods because they have it so good, and we made it easy for them. We gave them all the advantages. We're going to take some of that money and we're going to invest it in this neighborhood, and we may do that in a variety of ways. First, we got to fix the schools. We need to give some tax breaks to some corporations to come in here and create good jobs. But in order to do that, they have to feel like it's a place they want to be. So we're going to have to clean up the community. We're going to have to make the place also look nicer. And you know what? We may need to give some UBI, some basic income to people that are poor, so that they can go out and maybe they can make their house a little nicer. Maybe they can afford to dress a little better. Maybe they can afford to take some night classes. Maybe we give them free night classes, so when these tech jobs come in, they can go and they can work at these tech jobs. And so we're going to, because we gave all the benefits to the black and brown community, we're now going to take some of those benefits and we're going to move them over here because it was clearly disproportionate. And we know this because we looked at the outcomes. We looked at all these poor white people, and we saw that, like, the reason they were poor is because we created a bad system for them.
Well,
that,
the
my
reason
friend,
they're poor is because they don't have any drive.
No. We're talking about in this hypothetical. Remember, we already discussed this. The people in the white neighborhood are poor because there are no good jobs where they're at. They can only work jobs that are low paying wages. And for a long time, as the black and brown communities were growing, they weren't hiring any white people. And then we started forcing them to hire some white people, but it still wasn't entirely working because the neighborhood was staying poor. And only a few of you and your